In 1 Samuel chapter 10, to bring you up to where I'm going to begin reading, you're aware that Israel requested that God give them a king. And God made it very plain in chapter 9 that in so doing, they weren't rejecting Samuel, the man of God. Actually, it was in chapter 8 mostly. They weren't rejecting Samuel, the man of God, but they were rejecting God in asking for a human king. And so it seems to me that the Lord, He picked out the best of Israel, and that is the man by the name of Saul. He was head and shoulders above all the men of Israel. He had some tremendous characteristics, as we will see in future messages. But we find in chapter 10 that he comes to Samuel. He's about to leave, and in verse 1, Samuel pours that anointing oil on his head to anoint him as the future king, the first king of Israel. And then he tells him, Samuel tells Saul, here's what's going to happen. And he goes down to verse number 6. We've already dealt with those things, so I'm not going to spend time with those. But in verse 6 he says, and the Spirit of the Lord will come upon thee. Now this is Samuel talking to Saul. And thou shalt prophesy with them, and shalt be turned into another man. He would be what I would call a new man. And let it be, when these signs are come unto thee, that thou do as occasion serve thee, for God is with thee. And thou shalt go down before me to Gilgal, and behold, I will come down unto thee to offer burnt offerings, and to sacrifice sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days shalt thou tarry till I come to thee, and show thee what thou shalt do. And it was so that when he had turned his back to go from Samuel, God gave him another heart. And all those signs came to pass that day. So you've got a new man, and now we've got a new heart. And when they came thither to the hill, behold, a company of prophets met him, and the Spirit of God came upon him, and he prophesied among them. And it came to pass, when all that knew him beforetime saw that, behold, he prophesied among the prophets. Then the people said one to another, what is this that is come unto the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets? And one of the same place answered and said, but who is their father? Therefore it became a proverb, is Saul also among the prophets? And when he had made an end of prophesying, he came to the high place, and Saul's uncle said unto him and to his servant, whither went ye? And he said, to seek the asses. And when we saw that they were nowhere, we came to Samuel, and Saul's uncle said, tell me, I pray thee, what Samuel said unto you. And Saul said unto his uncle, he told us plainly that the asses were found, but of the matter of the kingdom whereof Samuel spake, he told him not. So I want to just quickly point out some of the things that I've already mentioned. And that is that Saul being changed into another man, it began, as I preached on Sunday morning, with obedience to the Lord. And we find that in verses 2 through 5. I also mentioned that it came after he met the right crowd, and they gave him bread and so on and so forth. And I dealt with that. And then this being changed was going to happen on the hill of God, according to verse number 5. It would happen among the prophets of God. It would happen during the worship of God. And I dealt with those things. And then I want you to notice in verse number 6 that he said, when this takes place, that it would, in essence, bring the presence and power of God for service. He said, when this happens in verse 6, thou shalt be turned into another man. And I hope that that is the heart's desire of every one of us tonight, that we sincerely desire to be more than we've ever been, to be different than we are, to be more like Christ, that God would sincerely give us an overhaul. That should be our heart's desire tonight. Every single one of us should desire to be a new man. Let God work in us. And then, verse 7, he says, and let it be when these signs are come unto thee. At the point that when you are turned, that the Spirit of the Lord comes upon you, and that you are turned into another man, then, he said, at that point in time, thou do as occasion serve thee, for God is with thee. So I want you to understand to begin with that when the Spirit and the power and the presence of God comes upon us, that will give us the power of God for the service of God. And so he is saying to him, when there is an occasion, when there becomes an occasion, take advantage of that opportunity. It means that there would be opportunities that were presented to Saul to serve God with his power and his presence. And I don't know about you, but that should be our desire. On occasion, there's going to be opportunities for you and I to do something for God, to serve Him, to be a witness for Him, to make a difference in somebody's life. And he's saying when the Spirit of God comes upon you and you're turned into another man, when these things happen, there's going to be occasions for you to serve Him. Now think about that. The encouragement is for him to take advantage of these opportunities. He says, God's with thee. In reality, what more do you and I need than the presence of God? Isn't that an awesome thing to me for him to look at Saul and say, look, there'll be an occasions for you to serve. There'll be opportunities on occasion for you to do something. And I just want you to know God's going to be with you. That's what I desire tonight, that God be with me. That God be with my family. That God be with my home, my children, our church. That God be with America. But what we need is to get ourselves as Saul. If Saul would obey what God told Samuel to tell him, then this would transpire. And he did exactly what Samuel told him to do. And it transpired just like God said it would. Tonight, you and I have got an opportunity for His power and His presence to rest upon us, and we can accomplish the will and the work of God in this day and hour. It is possible for us to make a difference in those around us. I think about Acts 1:8. God said to them, but ye shall receive power after that the Holy Ghost has come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses unto me both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost part of the earth. Now think about that. Those people that he said that to in Acts 1:8, they had been with him throughout his earthly ministry. They had heard his teaching. They had saw his miracles. They were aware of his resurrection and so on and so forth. And yet he said, you're still not ready to go until the power of God comes upon you. You and I can learn this Bible from cover to cover, and we can know that He is resurrected. We can be familiar with all of those things, and yet still not be prepared for service. We need to be new men with the hand of God upon us, with the Spirit of God upon us as He came upon. And of course, He indwells us. He would come upon Saul in this Old Testament passage, but now He indwells you and I. He's a permanent resident. Isaiah 11:2-3 says, and the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord, and shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord, and he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears. If we were to go back to Ephesians chapter 6, and be reminded that we need spiritual power Do you remember that? How many are, I'm serious now, how many tonight could you in your heart, I'm not asking you to raise your hand, but how many of you honestly would like to have the power of God upon your life? Spiritual power. Power to overcome temptations, power to be a witness, power to just live for God and obey God and keep the commands of God. That should be our desire tonight. And I remember as a young preacher, I remember watching preachers, not just him, but I remember watching preachers preach, and I remember talking to Brother Randy Bain one time. Brother Randy Bain was the one that was preaching the meeting that Brother Rackley got saved in. Was it 10 weeks? 7-week revival. So Brother Randy Bain was mightily used of God in those days, and he's still preaching. He preaches all over the world. We support him. And I went to Brother Randy one day. I was around him, and I said to him, I just starting out, probably 20 years old, and I said to him something about, I had a desire in my heart to have the power of God on my life. And I asked him about it. And his reply was something to this effect. He said, basically, he encouraged you just keep praying, you just keep walking with God. He said, he pointed to one of his boys that was young at that time. And he said, I wouldn't take my boy out here and put him in a souped-up Camaro and turn him loose on the highway with all that power. He said he'd get himself killed. And he said, I believe God is much in the same way with us. He is not going to give His power to those that are immature and not able to handle it. So it would behoove us then to do what we can to grow in grace and in knowledge and mature that we could handle the power of God in our life. I want to be that individual who could handle the power of God, don't you? That I wouldn't be lifted up in pride, that I wouldn't be foolish about God's hand upon my life. None of us should be that way, but we need God's power in this day. And God said, when the Spirit of God comes on you and you're turned into another man, when these things are come to pass, when these signs come to pass, there's going to be occasion that's going to arise. Just serve God. He'll be with you. That's my heart's desire tonight. He says in verse number 8, and thou shalt go down before me to Gilgal, and behold, I will come down unto thee to offer burnt offerings and to sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days shalt thou tarry till I come to thee and show thee what thou shalt do. Now, according to Josephus, this was to be a standing rule for the observance of Saul while the prophet and he lived, that in every great crisis, such as a hostile incursion on the country, he should repair to Gilgal, where he was to remain 7 days to afford time for the tribes on both sides Jordan to assemble and Samuel to reach it. Samuel apparently was the one, well, obviously he was the one that was to do the sacrificing. But if I understand it correctly, and if I read my history correctly, it would have been Saul that would have been required to provide these sacrifices. Now, as you think about that then, I believe that being changed into another individual would cause us to be sacrificial. In other words, the power of God and the presence of God is going to cost us something. We're not going to be able to do what everybody else does and still have the power and presence of God. You can have a circus and you can have the clowns and you can do a lot of different things, but if we're going to have the real power and presence of God, it's going to cost us some time. It's going to cost us some things. We're going to have to give up some things. We can't be like everybody else. We can't do like everybody else does. We're going to have to be different. But most people's not interested in that. They're not interested in making any kind of a sacrifice. And the thing about it is, I believe the point at which we are filled with the Spirit of God, we will joyfully and gladly give ourselves to God. We'll gladly give of our time. We'll give of our talent. We'll give of our treasure. I mean, the Lord, He gave His Son. What are we giving? What are we sacrificing? May the Lord help us to be like the Lord. The Bible says the Lord loveth a cheerful giver. Cheerful giver. I believe an individual that's full of the Spirit of God will not always be thinking about himself. It'll come with sacrifice. And then I want you to notice what else he says in verse number 9. And it was so that when he had turned his, let me flip the page, back to go from Samuel, God gave him another heart. And all those signs came to pass that day. I believe our new life, our new man, our new our power and the presence of God with us, it springs and it's caused by, initiated by a new heart. Ezekiel said, Ezekiel 18:31, cast away from you all your transgressions whereby ye have transgressed, and make you a new heart and a new spirit, for why will you die, O house of Israel? Ezekiel 36:26, a new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you an heart of flesh. And I know these are Old Testament references, but I believe that they apply and are a very an example of New Testament truth. In the New Testament, God gives us a new heart. The heart of a saved man is changed. Things that he once loved, he now loathes. Things that we once chased after, now we run away from. A new heart. I'll never forget this statement. You heard me say it 100 times in the last 30 years, I guess. More than that. But I'll never forget Brother Bill Day telling us in Bible college that the heart of man's problem is the problem of man's heart. Do you want to know what our biggest problem is? It's not that muscle that beats in us, but it's that heart problem. And most people's not willing to admit that. They're too proud to admit, I got a heart problem. But I promise you, every one of us struggle with it. We all battle with that old nature that's in there. Actually living for God, it comes from the heart. The decisions that we make, they come from our heart. How is your heart today? Do you have a heart for God? Do you have a heart for His Word? Do you have a heart to please Him and be with Him and fellowship with Him? I mean, do you have a heart to do anything that's Christ-like or godly? I think if you do, then you have a desire to do more and be more. To not be satisfied where we are. But unfortunately, there are no doubt people that sit on church pews, they're just as wicked and corrupt in their heart as they ever were. And the problem is, so many times we blame our circumstances, we blame our problems, we blame it on the devil, we blame it on everybody that's around us. But the fact of the matter is, as I've already said, the heart of our problem is the problem of our heart. That's the truth. I heard a testimony of a lady just a few days ago. And I believe she is I don't know what you call her, but I don't know. She's a false teacher. I believe she's a phony. I'll just put it like that. I believe she's a fake. And she was talking about, poor old me, my whole life. Everybody's mistreated me and everybody's always done me wrong. And I've always had problems with everybody I've come in contact with. And immediately, a red flag went up in my mind. You ever run into anybody like that? I mean, they've had 14 jobs, and every job that they lost, the problem was their boss. Right? Nobody in their family can get along with them, but the problem somehow is everybody in the family. It's always everybody else's fault. It's never their fault. They never realize, you know what? It might just be, I might be the common denominator here. But the problem is, we're all tempted to be guilty of that. If a man think he standeth, take heed lest he fall. We get to thinking we're doing all right, and everybody else is the problem. But I mean, you'd think sooner or later you might would recognize, well, maybe it's not everybody else. A lot of times people have problems with those that expect more out of them. I don't know how to say that exactly, but if you don't expect nothing out of somebody, and have no kind of standard or no kind of expectations out of somebody, well, they can pretty well get along with you. But if you expect something, well, then they have some problems with that. I mean, it's just like these people that go to these jobs. I know some of you that work in plants and places, y'all could tell it better than I can. But I hear stories about people coming to work. I mean, I think I've heard it from Mike and Steve and Billy and probably Lance and everybody else on the scene. You got these young people that come into a plant and somehow they expect a paycheck, but they don't expect to do anything for it. And they get upset because, and that's what I'm getting at, they get upset because the boss expects something out of them. The boss has some standards you're supposed to meet in order to get a paycheck. And they got a problem with that. Do you have a problem with everybody that expects anything out of you? You can find somewhere where nobody expects anything, but you'll be miserable. But I'm just saying, God, as He works in us and works through us, I believe He gives us a heart that's after Him, that desires for these things, that desire to do right. A new heart, another heart. Notice what verse 11 says. I'm about done. I know you'll be glad. I don't even have to get into my sack lunch. Verse 11. And it came to pass when all that knew him before time saw that. I guess I should have read verse 10. Saul, just like Samuel said, he's prophesying with the prophets. I've always loved verse 11. When all that knew him before time saw that, they started talking to each other. So what is that is come unto the son of Kish? You get what the picture is? Saul gets filled up, he's getting with the prophets, and he is spewing out the word of God. He's prophesying. And everybody that knew the old Saul was scratching their head. They were like, who is this guy? What has happened to Saul? Something's happening. He ain't the old Saul he used to be. And don't you believe that if God really begins to work in our hearts and work in our lives and change us into new men and put His hand upon us and His power and His presence is upon us and we are filled with the Spirit of God, don't you know that those who saw us before are going to see something different in the future? I am not preaching to you as one who has attained. I desire to, but I have to some degree seen this. And I think if you're saved, I think you've seen this. And I told you the story. I mean, I used to run with a crowd. We used to play ball all the time, play sports, get in all kind of meanness. And when I got right with God, I mean when I surrendered my life to God, I went and played, the best of my recollection, one more ball game with them. And I ain't heard from them since. You know what I really believe with all my heart? They said, who is this guy that we're playing ball with? He's not the same one that played ball with us last time. Something's happened to this fella. That's the way it ought to be. And I really believe that if we draw nigh to God and He begins to put His hand on our life and begins to use our life and we begin to walk in the Spirit, all of those around us are going to know something's going on. Something is different. And should that not be the case? If we were to go back 10 years ago and we were to ask our children, if we were to ask them now, am I the same daddy that I was 10 years ago? Am I the same pastor? Am I the same preacher that I was 10 years ago? I wonder what they'd say. And by the way, when they were growing up, there would be times when I would ask them questions like that. I think we ought to be honest with our children, and I hope they can be honest with us. There was times when I don't know exactly how I would word it, but basically what I wanted to know, and I guess y'all would remember times when basically I'd want to know, do you look at me like I'm a hypocrite? I probably didn't word it exactly like that. Because if anybody knows me, they do. Those three do. I want them to see me as somebody that is real. Don't you parents want your children to see? I believe that's why sometimes we raise a generation that cares nothing about God. Because they don't see anything real. They see one thing at church and they see something else at home. But it was obvious to those that knew Him, something had happened. He didn't have to advertise it. He didn't have to carry a sign. They were all standing around asking each other, what in the world has happened to Saul? I wonder if anybody in our life lately has said, what in the world's happened to them? Or ever. Has anybody ever looked at your life and said, man, they're not the person they used to be. There's something different about them. Quiet in here now. And then verse 13. And when he had made an end of prophesying, he came to the high place. I love that statement. I believe that high place was apparently where, and I've already explained that in a previous message, where the ark of God was. It symbolized the presence and the power of God. And I'd say again that low living is not for the child of God. When you get into the presence of God and have the power of God upon you, that is as high as you can get. That's the best high you can get. There's people out there that are chasing all kinds of things for fulfillment. They're looking for some kind of a new high, whether it be a position or in some kind of substance or whatever the case may be. I mean, people find their fulfillment in so many different things. But I'm telling you, if you begin to walk with the Lord and have His hand upon your life and let Him use your life, there is nothing greater. That's as high as it gets. And I'm afraid that that is the normal Christian life, but I'm afraid the normal Christian life has become abnormal. But we need to rise above the world, the flesh, the storms of life, and have a total transformation of life. I believe that's what happened. Saul apparently was a good guy, and I'll point some of this out a little bit more as I try to move forward in this study on him. I'll try to point some of these things out. But even in our text, I'll just go ahead and point this out right quick. Notice what verse 16 says. When he gets to his uncle, he told us plainly, talking about what Samuel said, plainly that the asses were found. But look at this last statement of verse 16. But of the matter of the kingdom whereof Samuel spake, he told him not. Now, what would most people do? If Samuel anointed a young man to be the king over Israel, most young men would have been like everybody they meet. Let me tell you what happened to me today. Samuel anointed me to be the king over this crowd. But he wouldn't even tell his uncle. To me, that's humility. I mean, he wasn't going around boasting about what happened to him. He was humble. It seems to me Saul was a pretty good fella. God chose him to be the king, and on top of that, He gave him a new heart. He changed him into another man. He let the Spirit of God come upon him. He prophesied among the prophets. He was I'll say it like this, God made him into a better man. That's what it appears like to me. And at this point in the series, all I'm saying is it should be our heart's desire to be better men, to be better women, to be better servants for the Lord, to be better prepared, to take advantage of the opportunity that you and I have to serve this generation. There's going to be opportunities for you young people in the days to come for you to do something for God. Take advantage of it. Don't waste it. Don't throw it away. Take advantage